Movietone. Leslie Mitchell reporting. The invasion of Sicily. The first film to reach Britain shows the naval side of the operation. The equally thrilling story from the beaches onwards is on its way. This is just part of the mass of shipping ploughing across the Mediterranean. Just part of the biggest invasion armada in history. An armada made up of scores of different classes of vessels, totaling over 2,000 in all. Transports and landing craft, escorting cruisers and destroyers, and small vessels as well. And of course, the gigantic armada was covered by a strong force of battleships and aircraft carriers. Passing the island of Sambra, not much more than a rock near Cape Bon, the northeasterly tip of Tunisia. And passing Cape Bon itself. Only a short while ago, 250,000 of the enemy surrendered not far from there. And now, after only a brief lull in which to perfect the invasion plan, the invasion is on. A destroyer comes alongside to transfer a military expert who has been brought out with information of the utmost urgency. He's slung across while the ships steam their course at speed. A nice piece of work. I dare say he was glad when it was over. This was some time before the landings, and Graham Thompson, who was there, as well as Norman Fisher and Jim Humphreys, all Movietone men, Graham says that sometimes it looked as though there was nothing much going on except a pleasant cruise in the Mediterranean. Everything was going according to plan, as a matter of fact, if we accept the strange behavior of a balloon which provided an entertainment all its own. Actually, of course, every man in every ship was keyed up to the last degree, and it goes without saying that attack by enemy aircraft was expected all the time. A strong reception awaited any that might elude the RAF and the Fleet Air Arm. All was going well, then suddenly, in a matter of a few hours, the wind rose to gale force. All right for the big ships, but how about the small ones? And how about the landing craft if this weather kept up? After weeks of the most meticulous calculations, and it's hard to imagine the extraordinary amount of detail involved in such an operation as this. Was it all to go for nothing, simply owing to a freak of the weather? How were the men to get ashore in such a swell and in such a wind? And if they did get ashore with all their equipment, would they be fit to leap into battle and storm the defenses? Hope and gloom alternated in everybody's mind. Then, as suddenly as it had arisen, the wind fell away. The miracle had happened, as it happened at Dunkirk. The gales subsided, the seas flattened out, and I shouldn't be surprised if the men of the Armada took it as a sign. Call it a sign or call it luck, it held anyway. And so in almost ideal conditions, the great invading force approached the shores of Sicily. A heavy night bombardment from the sea preceded the landing. For the Canadians, years of intensive training and patient waiting now reached a climax. In Britain, they had stood guard against invasion by the Axis. Now they were in the spearhead of invasion of Axis territory. It went according to plan. The Canadians carried their objectives. In fact, as General Montgomery said, they were terrific. The landings were by no means unopposed, even if the option was less than expected. Shore batteries shelled the invaders, and the supply ship received a direct hit. The right flank of the 100-mile invasion line was in the care of the 8th Army, men from the United Kingdom, men of the most famous fighting force in the world. They too carried all before them, establishing a primary bridgehead and speedily consolidating. When Graham Thompson arrived on the scene, men and equipment were coming along in a steady flow. The shores of southeastern Sicily had been cleared, and more stuff was being landed. While some men waded ashore, others had the pleasure of landing in ducks. Ducks, of course, are the famous amphibians, half landing craft, half lorry. But it's quite a job to keep a camera steady coming ashore in one. Prisoners had already been taken. Prisoners were already making gestures which were undoubtedly meant for the friendly V sign. History had been made, and incidentally a historic film record of it taken. There was even a moment to spare to take a shot of a few of the boys typifying the spirit of victory on the shores of Sicily.